The sun has left and forgotten me.
Your stories don't define you, but how you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief storymaker at Elkins Consulting. Whether you're sharing business stories or personal stories, how you share them matters. The stories that you tell internally affect how you are perceived externally. So I encourage you, before you start sharing a story, that you think about the intention behind it. How do I want to feel when I finish telling this story? And how do I want the person listening to feel? What do I want them to know about me? This is a quick and easy way to not control, but influence how you're perceived by the people around you. And when you're intentional about it, it can change your relationships for the better. Today's guest, Judit Piros, is originally from Hungary, and we met because of the introduction that I had with Anne Plaisance, who is my guest in episode, I believe it's 406 or 407 of Your Stories Don't Define You podcast. It's a fantastic episode, and I encourage any listeners now to go back after you finish listening to this episode and listen to the one with Anne Plaisance. Both of these women are phenomenal artists who use their art in their way of sharing their stories and also being activists in their communities, making sure that people can use art and experience art as an opportunity for healthy self-reflection. So, Judit, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Nice to meet you too, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I was looking through your site, and particularly a video that you shared on Instagram about the piece that came out, the artwork that came out, because you work in ceramic and clay, and it came out of the kiln more damaged than you had anticipated. You intentionally make holes in it as lanterns, but one of them came out more damaged. And your story about how you had to shift your perspective, you had to shift the way that you were looking at this piece of art, because the others who looked at it didn't see the damage the way you saw it. So that immediately intrigued me. But let's start the way that I usually start these conversations. Okay. I would love for you to share something about yourself that most people might not know about you, something that's not on your bio, your website, or any kind of LinkedIn profile.
That also attached to the question you asked me before in writing that what was a very transformational experience in my life. And so in 2016, there was a very strong clean cut in my life, but people did not see because it was happening completely inside. And I always I like to refer to that video clip of Michael Jackson, which is, I think it's Remember the Time, and it begins with that magical scene when he falls apart into small beans and then it builds up again. And one day in 2016, I really had like this experience. I got a very small trigger. I fall completely apart, and I could not do anything else, just cry, which was absolutely not related to that trigger itself. And I was already lucky be connected with some amazing therapists, and one of them with whom I worked, we just finished working. It was almost 10 years together. And I called her. I could hardly breathe, hardly talk. And she was like, okay, Where are you now? Where are your kids? They are in safe. You are safe. Okay. Take a pen and paper, go out to the forest or somewhere and just write. And write everything down, and listen to your body sensations. Write them down. Maybe memories will come. Write them down. And when you're done, call me back. And I did so. And some hours later, I was able to call her back in a completely new self. And it was an amazing transformation for myself. And actually, nobody realized it because it wasn't visible, of course, because nothing happened. And when I went back I've been to my parents' house and they were my kids, they, of course, did not know it. But since that, so many things happened in life. And I really feel like that toy, but you turn down and it always comes back because of the weight in the button. I don't know how you call it in
Yes,
English.
back when I was a kid, there were toys called Weebelos, and
Yes.
the jingle was Weebelos follow, but they don't fall. Weebelos follow, but they don't fall down.
Yes.
That was a jingle
Yeah.
for it.
And that is what not many people know about me. That it happened this fast in a second. Of course, it needed preparation, but and since that, so far, any hit I got from life, I was able to stand up 24 or at most 48 hours. I mean, to get balanced again.
Wow. Wow. One thing keeps coming back to the image of you getting off the phone and pulling yourself together enough to grab a notebook and pen and walk out, and pulling yourself together enough to tell whoever was watching your children, I'm walking away, I'll be back. Because you have to do that first, right? If you're going to change something. And then the next image I have of you, beside being out writing and spending time in nature writing and expressing everything that was coming across your brain, your heart, your body, is coming back in and believing that no one knew, that no one could see the difference. Because in my experience, we can definitely see the difference, even if we're not conscious of it.
Yeah, that can be, yes. Yeah, probably. So what it was so funny because for a very long time, people around me reacted to my old self,
Mhm.
to my old triggers when they tried to manipulate me. They were pulling the same and
The
it did
same
not work.
threads, right? Poking the
Yes,
same buttons.
absolutely. And it was so, in a way, it was funny, like, this will not work, but yeah, nice try. It was cool.
Exactly. So they
Yes.
definitely saw the difference, even if they didn't know why or what was happening. They couldn't see what was going on behind the scenes because you weren't sharing that. And they didn't necessarily know the moment that you changed.
Yeah.
But they definitely, the reason I say that is that I think oftentimes we're in denial that we can hide things from the people that are closest to us, especially our children, but
Mm,
also our manipulators. We
mhm.
definitely know when something has changed because the whole intent is control and manipulation.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, because of course it comes with boundaries. And then
Exactly.
I set boundaries and they go crazy from the boundaries. So they try to get over it, but the old way, because they
It's
see
more
and feel
comfortable
that,
for them. They don't want the
yeah,
change.
absolutely not. And they well, at least that types I met, they hardly adapt for
Mhm.
change. It's very hard for them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it is.
So when you think back, 2016, how old were your children?
You always have to count for.
It was 10
2016,
years ago,
it was
11
10
years
years.
ago.
Yeah, so one was 2, and one was 6 and 8. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, they were very
That's
small.
that's serious transformation, especially for the 8-year-old, because the 8-year-old was aware in a way that the 2-year-old and 6-year-old couldn't have been intellectually aware.
Yeah, intellectually for sure. Yeah, it's amazing how aware kids can be. Yeah.
Now you have an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Um, what changed in your relationship with them? Particularly, let's start with the 8-year-old, because our relationships with our children are different from child to child. My relationship with my older son is very different from my relationship with my younger son. So what do you think changed in your relationship with your oldest in that time?
After this, it's pretty hard to tell. I would go back maybe more in time, because this transformation was the end result of a very, very intense year.
Mm-hmm.
1 year before that, I remember it was a very sunny day, and I was standing on the balcony. Again, I was poked with a very minor thing, and my mind blow, and I went crazy, and I was really like, okay, this is not proportional. What is going on? This is bad, and I have to look for help. So I went to a therapist, and I told her what I know about myself, about the way I was born, and everything that I collected during the years. And she was like, oh, okay, you should go to her. And she sent me to another therapist whose name is Katalin Oros. And I knew nothing about her by the time, but I was like, okay, I want to get out, so I do whatever I am told. And she is an amazing person. And she was leading groups, rebirth groups, because the way you were born very, very much define how you live and how you experience life. And already the so-called normal birth is already a thing.
Right.
But when
It's right. Traumatic
yes,
experience for both the mother and the infant, even in a
yeah,
normal and uneventful, relatively uneventful birth, you
yeah,
still have the
yeah,
trauma of that exposure.
absolutely. So at
Mhm.
the smallest you can tell about it, or the last that you can tell, it's that transformative, and most of the time it's traumatic. And I don't know how it was where you were born, but in Hungary, if you are older than 20 and younger than 70, I'm pretty sure that it was a traumatic experience because of the rules.
Right.
Because of the rules. And mine was had an extra twist in it. So it was like, yeah, you should go there. And so I went. I had to wait. There were some criteria you had to get through. You had to be after a certain age. You had to be already at least half year in therapy, and you had to commit that even after the group, you will go to therapy at least for a half year. And
Mhm.
when this was a 3-day long weekend, and when they let us go, it was told that now in the upcoming half year, no divorce, no change in anything important, like do not move to another city, country, wherever, do not change your work, do not break up with relatives or friends, because you will project all the time of the things that came up in you. And this was so that transformation I told about was exactly 8 months later, and I was born premature a little bit, so after the end of on the end of the 8th month. And then it happened, this transformation of mine, and it
Wow.
still took years to work through, but it was that minute. And my relationship with my kids changed more after that, because I started to understand a lot of things about myself, about them, how their experience can be. And really, I was like, oh, why I wasn't here before getting a mother, because that can be so much different. Although I prepared a lot and I talked to them and I did whatever I could, and I think their birth was pretty peaceful. And still, it would be so great to know about it, or it would be so great to know about these things about myself, that when you had a rough time at the start, you will relive it unconsciously again and again every time when you have a child in that age. So any kind of fears and depression and crazy thoughts can come up, and you will not understand why are you feeling that. And with my firstborn, I was well, it was like a horror movie sometimes.
Yeah.
So yes, it was like I looked at people and I literally saw them dying and rotting, and sometimes even my baby, that what would happen to his body after. And I was walking on the bridge pushing the baby cart and the stroller, and I had images in my mind that what if the bridge would collapse, how would we fall into the water? And so it was
All the morbid thoughts you have about
yeah.
and I'm not surprised by that. I think a lot of us, a lot of mothers especially, have a different kind of fear when we have a baby. That that reality of, oh my gosh, I just took a part of my heart out of my body and it belongs to this tiny being. And if something happened to this tiny being, part of my heart would never recover. I think
Yes.
many of us have
Absolutely.
very morbid thoughts.
Yes.
But the question is, do they take over and over, as you said, is it an overstatement over what's actually happening in that moment? Are we exaggerating it?
And
Depending on
are we able to be present?
right.
Because when you have all this thing happening inside, you are so much occupied to be normal that
Right.
you do not have a free channel for connection, or you might not have. It's there are no
Well, it's
rules for
different for
that, but
everybody. Yes.
yes, of course. And
Wow.
I think if I would know that earlier, then I could be prepared, because from time to time I still get triggered. And funny thing is that later on, like 5 years later, I figured out that I was born on Monday, and by that time of my life, it was challenging again. On Sunday, I started to go down, and the Mondays were terrible, but Tuesday were better. And after that, I got aware of this, and I still can have it. On Mondays, I try to be gentle with myself, and I already remember that it will be gone. Do not decide about anything on Monday.
Don't change anything dramatically on a Monday because Tuesday will be better.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I think everyone can benefit from that thinking, that idea that when you're experiencing some sort of significant transformation or inspiration in your head and your heart, not to make any major changes immediately, because you need to see how it's going to play out before you end a relationship or begin a relationship or choose to. I told somebody, my cousin years ago called me. She had just graduated from college and she didn't know what she wanted to do next. And she had two options in her head. And I said, Becca, there are only two things that your decision can't be undone once it's done. One is having a kid and the other is skydiving. pretty much everything else, you can undo the decision or switch gears. And I remember saying that out loud to her and thinking, I need to remember that too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I love that you
Yeah.
just said that getting through the Monday, not making any significant rash decisions on a Monday because Mondays are hard.
Yeah.
I know my mom.
For me, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, I can tell you Mondays were hard for me throughout my career. I had some jobs that I would get a migraine every Sunday night.
Oh, wow.
So Mondays could be really hard for me, and I would get itchy on Mondays to change something and sometimes sabotaged things. And it was almost always on a Monday that I would sabotage something, or a Friday, because I didn't want to go into the weekend knowing that it was going to end. I was going to have to come back.
Oh, wow.
But yeah. And I don't think that's unusual. I think people just don't know they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they just maybe think that it's only work related, but who knows?
No. So have you always been an artist? Has that been
No.
something? No. Okay. So
Well,
in
hard to
some
tell.
way, yes, yes. Well, I don't mean professionally. At one time, I realized that I was very resistant to labeling myself as an artist because I couldn't draw. I'm not a good drawing artist, even though I spent 13 years with studio space at a ceramic art studio, making functional and decorative pottery. But I still resisted the term artist because I couldn't draw. So,
nice.
yeah, isn't that sad? I'm a musician. I've been a musician my whole life, but the word artist seemed like it was a particular label that I couldn't own. So I hear what you're saying about whether you've been an artist your whole life. When you think about the art that you're doing now, what was a point when you built something that you realized when you look back now that it was really the beginning of the journey of expressing your experiences, the rebirth, the cut off, the break apart? What was that moment or story?
It was two, but the first I have to mention happened just recently. But after I realized that, then I realized the other. So I start with this one. I was always looking at Anne like, yeah, wow, she's an artist. And not only because of her skills, but she has something to tell and her story is great. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm making this shape because I'm attracted to it, but I don't know actually why. And then someone asked me that, okay, but the story you tell, is this the story really what you want to talk about? And I was like, probably not, because I always have to read through that, okay, what is my story? and then
if you have to read it, it's probably
yes,
not coming
yeah,
from your authentic, deeply vulnerable self.
Yes, absolutely. And that story is great, but it was not, well, I know more about it. And then it was really like sitting, and it's like, wow, now I understand. And there's a saying that if you have a hammer in your hand, you think everything is a nail. For me, the birth story is that thing that I see it everywhere, and in everyone. So it's like, okay, it is what it is. And I started to look at my moons, and that the moon is like, when it's changing, that shadow is like a pregnant belly, which is growing. And not the light is growing there, but the shadow, the darkness. And we are in the world of shadows, which is the bipolar essence of this life. And when we are preparing to be born, we are in darkness. All life starts in darkness. Even the seeds, we as human, we start our journey in the dark. And to be born and all the stories around childbirth, they can be so dark and so bloody and so painful, especially when there is a loss. But people love to put aside. We only look at the good things. And that was it. Wow, that's why the moon. That's why the shape. And also that the moon is something which we only see the bright side from here, from Earth. We don't see the dark side of the moon. And we have guessing what is on the other side. And of course, now we see, and but from Earth, you do not see the dark side of the moon. Nobody sees it. But we all experience it, and we know that there is something. So this is how it got connected, and then all the puzzles get into their place. Like these pieces are, well, they look good and they are very aesthetic from the outside, but you see their true light when it's dark, and the darker the more you see. And I think this is the connection for transformation, because you cannot transform if you are always on the cheerful side of life. You need challenges, you need hardships, you need suffering to be able to transform. And this is when you learn your own strength, your own capabilities. Because if you're never challenged, how would you know?
I'm thinking about a couple of different aspects of this. One is the challenges that people take on that turn them. Every person that experiences a struggle or challenge, it seems to me, either goes one direction or the other afterward. Here's an example. A man I used to be in touch with via LinkedIn was raised in very, very poor poverty conditions in a city. He is African American, and I can't remember all the details of his family life, but I know that he and his sister were very poor and not in a great place, and their mom was doing things that would not be good for any child.
Mm.
And he managed to be really good as an athlete, and found his way out of that cycle through a coach that saw him and helped him leave that behind. He ended up becoming one of those people that says, well, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's almost like he lost part of his compassion because he managed to find an escape route. Where others that I've known in similar circumstances are the ones that have even more compassion for people who can't, who don't have an athletic ability, or are mediocre students, or just simply don't see the potential because they don't have anyone that is seeing their potential to help them move out of those cycles. That's what came to mind when you were talking about struggle and how it changes us, and that we cannot grow, we cannot transform. We actually cannot find true joy and awe and happiness without having the darkness be part of it, as far as I'm concerned. And how I know a lot of philosophers that agree with me over the last few thousand years. What are you thinking when you hear that aspect of darkness and growth?
Well, while I was listening to you now, that came to my mind that there's always a why. Like, okay, why could I overcome this? Because of that and that. And why? And why? And why? You can always go deeper. And even if you take siblings from the same family with, let's say, twins, and so let's say everything is the same, which is never.
Right.
But
I hear where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can happen that one of them finds the way out and the other gets into addiction. And there is always a lost why, what I think we cannot answer. So for my personal journey, first there was some kind of denial and guilt and blah, and it was hard to accept that I had this experience inside the womb and during my birth. Then it turned into something like it was so cool to tell these stories to people who know what it means, and they were like, oh my God, scare them. And I really felt like, yeah, I'm survived. I am so cool. And then I started to think, okay, but why? And okay, why? And then I found out that I don't know. I don't know what makes the difference that one person can realize that they need help and can ask for help and the other cannot.
Right. The internal versus external circumstances. We can pinpoint a dozen external circumstances that make or break a situation, but we can't pinpoint the internal mindset and brain capacity to change.
Yeah. Because if you already started the change, then it can go many ways, anywhere. But to be able to see that you have to change and you have to change, at least I do not know the answer for sure.
Right. Well, I agree. And I've seen it from across all different situations, all different circumstances. It reminds me of the story of, oh gosh, I'm going to mangle this, but I'm going to try anyway. The story is about faith and a man who is living in a place that's flooding, and all of his neighbors and the law enforcement officers are coming door to door saying, you need to evacuate, this area is going to be flooded. And the guy's like, God will take care of me, I have this faith. And then indeed the floods come, and he's up in the second floor, and people come by again and say, you need to evacuate, this is all going to flood, and you're risking your life here. And he's like, no, God will take care of me. And then he's on the roof, and the helicopter comes by, and he's like, no, of course, no, God will take care of me. And the question always comes back to, I sent you all these different people to help you. And that was like, how did you miss this? How did you miss my signals? And I think about that all the time. We miss so many signals because it doesn't come in the form that we want or believe or anticipate. And we have all these signals that we ignore, or sometimes consciously, actively, obstinately choose not to see. The willful ignorance of missing those signals.
Yes.
Oh,
yes. That's amazing. Yeah. And we are all seeing our own movies. So what can I realize? Yeah, it's very interesting.
You just reminded me too of I spoke with Melissa Hughes years ago about I was struggling with a client that I had sent some information to, and I thought maybe I did it wrong. I thought we had a great relationship. I thought this was going to come back right away, and now I'm struggling with this. And Melissa said, Sarah, stop making up the story of what's happening, because your brain wants to fill in the gaps, and so it's making shit up. So stop filling in the gaps that you can't know, and either give it time or ask. Keep it simple. And I was thinking, oh, this is about 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And I remember checking in with the client and saying, hey, I had this realization that maybe that last email didn't have the tone that I had intended. Are we okay? And she wrote back, she's like, oh, yeah. I was just going to respond to you. I just, got behind on stuff. And yeah, we fill in the gaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. So I know that we're coming to the end, and I would like to know where you're going with this art. You said that these moon shapes finally got you to this point where you noticed just recently where this was coming from, and then you were able to pinpoint a time before that you hadn't realized was connected. What was the time before?
Yeah. So when I started to become an artist, it was like
Officially.
officially. So when I started to learn how to make these clay-like sculptures, it was from another Hungarian artist. And when I was shaping my first sphere, and there was a cut on it, and I had to shape it from the inside, and it was like, oh my God, this is the size of a bomb again, with a cesarean section and tiny legs kicking from inside. And that was the point when I got hooked to it, like, oh my God, it's so much my story, and to work with the clay, to touch it, and all the unpredictability, and this is how it started to develop. But that was the point when I was really drawn into it, that I want to make this kind of thing again and again and again, and I need to make it. And I wasn't conscious about it yet until recently, so 2 years passed until I found out that it's not aesthetics only. And now I do not have to reread my story, because I remember what my pinpoints are, and I really think that maybe it sounds pretty grandiose, but this whole world can be a much better place if we would pay attention how our kids are born. And this is so important. And even if it did not turn out well, because any reasons, things can happen, it's mendable in a way. And there are so many ways to make it better, or just to be to feel to be, how you call it, sorry,
that's okay. I'm super impressed by your English. Very impressed by your English. So empathetic, right?
Empathetic, to be empathetic towards them, and the other two are like, to being vulnerable is being safe, because to being vulnerable is letting control go, because we do not have control on so many things. But how we react on things and how we shape our inner world, that's the part where we have some control. And the third one is because when I was on this 3 days transformation group, I came out from one of the exercises like laughing. Everybody was crying. I was laughing. And I was like, but this is just a game. And this is also a way you can look at life, that even transformation, even therapy, even traumas, which are very serious, there is always a chance to look at them with humor, and it makes it easier. It makes it so much more fun. Then you can laugh about yourself and about the things happening to you, because sometimes the only thing, the only tool you have left is just to laugh about it. That like, okay, this I cannot believe anymore. So it's like, and this is how it comes together with my art, that this is what I would like to show, and make the connection with all the unpredictability, all the things that you cannot see when there is light outside, and that you can never. With clay, it's always, you have to be very open for the result and for the outcome, because you can never be sure. And I had a piece which was amazing, and I wanted it so much, and I had to take out of the kiln by hand because it was so fragile, and I had in the big gloves with the shield, and my heart was racing that, okay, I soon have to touch it, the 1700 Fahrenheit piece, to put into reduction. And I was there, and it was exploded. And it's like, oh, okay. Then I do not have to And I felt real grief in small, but it was like, oh, I wanted it so much, and it's gone. And the clay always teaching me this kind of lessons, with that piece what you told, and it's yeah.
Yes. Well,
But it
for our
was
listeners who haven't explored clay work, uh, m- most of us, I would say every single one of us, has had an incident where we were very much in love with a piece before it was fully fired. So, for our listeners, when somebody builds a piece, especially with a clay body that requires very, very high temperatures to become solid, it's the kilns. There are a variety of kilns that go to different temperatures, and the very high temperature kilns require a particular kind of clay. That's what porcelain is high fired clay body. And for our listeners, when we have a piece that is complete, but it hasn't been fired, but it hasn't, and it has maybe not even been through an initial firing so that you can put glaze on it, that's called greenware. And that is very delicate. It's dried mud, is what it is. And all of us have had a piece that we've been very happy with in that phase of its building where something has happened. I grabbed one slightly by the handle, and the handle broke, and my piece that I was so pleased with dropped on the ground and shattered. So, and as clay artists, most artists have to go through this, but especially particularly clay artists, we can't be especially attached to an outcome because there are so many pieces, so many what's the word I'm looking for? Things that can change in the process of building something from clay. So you have going from being very dry but very delicate, and then we go through a pre-firing so that the glaze will stick to the clay. And then after the pre-firing, it's still very delicate because it hasn't been high fired, and the clay body is designed to be under very high temperatures. So you put this glaze on, and the thing that makes the glaze the colors that you want is the heat. And heat can be approached in a lot of different ways. It can get hot very fast. It can get hot very slow. It can get to a certain temperature and then speed up in getting very hot. We can't control all the variables that go into the aspects of clay work. And so when this comes out of a high fired kiln, and there are a variety of different kinds of firings that I saw on Judith's Instagram site, that she does the raku firing, which is even more variables thrown into that. What you use to burn to create that high heat, it's not gas. It's not just wood. It's usually some sort of dry grasses or hay. I mean, there are all kinds of things you put in there. And the intention behind that is the variables, the not knowing what's going to come out.
Yes.
But you're still sometimes attached to particular aspects of it, like its shape. And in this case, Judith's sculpture came out broken, not just the color
Not
wasn't
even broken, exploded.
Exploded.
Small pieces. Yeah.
So
And I was happy it didn't ruin the other pieces.
Exactly, because if it's being in the kiln fired with other pieces, its potential is that it had a little air bubble in it and it explodes and damages everybody else's work inside the kiln. So I just wanted to make sure our listeners understood the process.
It was a great summary. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many potential things that can go sideways and that can make something turn out incredibly gorgeous that you had no idea that was going to look like it was going to look, especially with raku firing. So let's come full circle back to this idea that you felt like you didn't express externally the change that occurred for you, the night and day difference that day in the woods when you wrote down all of the parts of you that felt broken. And you're coming back from that now, 10 years later. What is something you would want other people to know as a result of that transformation? That moment where you thought other people couldn't know externally.
It may be longer than a sentence.
That's okay. There are no
But
rules here.
what I learned in this way, and what I think was the most important, is that we have the mind, the body, and the soul. And for me, it works the best when these three can cooperate in balance. Mostly after school, when we are getting out of school, we are head heavy. Our mind is dominant. And later, some learn how to connect to their souls, and that's about emotions and spirituality, and the mind gets behind. And I saw actually very few who can incorporate the body when you start to remember with your cells on cell level, and get aware of body sensations, very tiny ones, like a little flick in your stomach, or
Warnings.
yeah, the warnings, or that I have around my hip a little tension for some aggression. I just realized that. And when these three start to work together, so for example, a body sensation made me aware that I am in a very bad marriage, because when I had to write about a movie, I felt my stomach turning stone, and it was like, oh, this is how I feel when I'm with my husband, and this is not good. And then I start to think about it, and when I learned to incorporate these three, so none of them is overdosed, and they work together, that was the most balanced times in my life. But they are also waving.
Right, of course.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so this.
That is such a brilliant takeaway. I mean, I think
I'm
about
happy.
that. Good. I think about that a lot. I even had a comment about that during my Stop Shooting on Yourself workshop the other day, was that we have to take inventory regularly about how, not just how we're feeling, but where it's coming from. And I mentioned that if you can figure out your physical response to somebody pushing a boundary that you didn't know you had, or that you set and they're still pushing those buttons, as you said, the triggers. If you feel it and you notice that you're feeling it, then it makes all the rest of that inventory make more sense. And it happens way faster, and you start to realize earlier, before you explode,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
that's what's happening. So that is a perfect takeaway. And thank you for sharing that. I hadn't put that together quite so clearly. So the mind, and then the heart, and spirituality, and then the body. Oh, that's beautiful. You did. This was such a wonderful conversation. I'm grateful that you reached out after listening to the episode with Anne Plaisance, because this is wonderful. And listeners, just so you know, we will have links to Judit's art, to her Instagram, and other things that we referenced during our conversation, at elkinsconsulting.com in the show notes associated with this podcast episode. And I believe you had a particular link you wanted us to include. What was that?
Yes, I have a kind of workbook, a guide about these topics. I like to talk a lot. and with some questions and small exercises. So I hopefully can send this link soon, and there it can be downloaded for anybody who is interested in.
Absolutely. And that link to a workbook so that you can start uncovering your own ideas about what's in the shadows and how you can see the light.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. Listeners, it's your turn. I have 2 things that I would love for you to consider over the next few weeks after listening to this episode. One, if you are a person who has given birth to a living child or living young adult, what is the birth story that you share in front of them? What is the birth story that you tell people? Is it traumatic? Have you figured out a way to share the story in a way that feels beautiful and meaningful, regardless of what actually happened that day, regardless of the pain that you experienced and the fear? How can you tell that story in a way that when your child hears it, they hear the joy and gratitude that they are there with you now? That's my first question. My next one is, what is it that is your tell? What is the signal your body gives you when something isn't right? I'd encourage you over the next few weeks to try to identify what that is. In Judit, she said that it's a twitch in her hip, in the muscles around her hip. For me, it's usually some sort of effect from my essential tremors. I start to shake badly enough that it's very noticeable. So when you feel uncomfortable or something is making you angry, take inventory of your body, figure out where you're feeling it, and make a choice, conscious choice, to notice whenever that is giving you the warning you need to change something. Thank you so much for listening to Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. I'm Sarah Elkins, and I'm looking forward to hearing your comments about this episode.
That's the time. You must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.